Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. In this video I wanted to share some music by a dub techno producer from Australia called Noosa Sound System. Noosa Sound System is an artist who that actually is the reason why I wanted to do this video is multiple reasons why. Not only because I like his music, but he also did an album on my label as well that I released a couple of months ago. Also because he's a really nice guy, and I really feel like he's pushing the boundaries in the style of music he does. And then also, I wanted to show a great example of somebody who's putting a lot of effort forth into making a physical release very special. And I'll show you explain the whole story, or explain the short story behind the actual release. Kind of show you a little bit about the release, and then at the end of this video, I'll play all 3 tracks of it so you can actually hear it. And then down in the links I'll share a few of his links, his Bandcamp page, also the Bandcamp page for his release on my label, which is free to download for anybody who wants to check out more of his music. But I would definitely encourage you guys to look into this artist, because he's definitely doing some good things, and it's great to see somebody put so much time and effort into, and their finances into, a physical release to make it very special. There's only 12 copies of this record that he made. This is more of a dub plate type, a version, kind of getting back to the roots of one-off records, and back in the days in the 70s, and that kind of dub, early dub and inspired and reggae sort of one-off 7 inches, making dub plates and things like that. Kind of comes from that lineage, and that's kind of taken over into dub techno in the 90s and 2000s, and to see an artist kind of put out 12 copies and put this much effort forth into a release just shows you another level of how they're presenting their music. And I think that's really important. That's really special too. Is it definitely, I think in some ways this is a very challenging time in the industry when it comes to putting out music and supporting music and sharing music and manufacturing music and selling music. Just very, very challenging. I'm very deep into it right now. I could tell you so many things that I'm doing right now involved in physical music, from trying to get labels signed, to trying to get artists signed, to trying to get on labels, to selling some records right now of an artist who just came out this week, and shipping out some records, packaging some records. I'm also working on getting some stuff released on my label, some physical labels, also going through the new tariff issues, and it's just a very challenging. And then not to mention the prices of making records right now, and then also the prices that records are getting to. I just this week I spent I think it was, with shipping, I think it was $70 for a 3x12 from England. And I don't often spend $50 for a record, but this was a 3x12, and it's a reissue from a 1994 record that's kind of important for me. Actually, I have you can't see it, but I actually even have a original poster from 1994 over there. It's from an artist that I really admire a lot, and you'll see that probably in a future video. I'll talk about that. I think it's supposed to get here in like a couple weeks or something like that. But it's just very interesting, very challenging, and time in manufacturing vinyl and buying vinyl and all those things. It's just very interesting. And so to see somebody putting so much effort forth into 12 copies is just deserves a lot of praise, and just in itself. And on top of that, the way how much time he puts into the music, how much effort he puts into the music, and the level of depth in the audio is really, really exciting. And if you're really into like music that challenges and really pushes the sonic envelope, like Noosa Sound System is somebody who does that, so I definitely want to share that at the end of this video by playing it. But if you're into dub techno and you're into ambient, definitely check out Noosa Sound Systems. Check out the links below for more. 43 Station is a boutique record label and remix project established by Noosa Sound System in 2025. The project is named and inspired by NASA's DSS-43, which is Deep Space Station 43, which is located in his home country of Australia, in the city of Canberra. Just wanted to show the release a little bit. A lot of labels are doing this, and I think this is kind of a, when I talk about like creating, manufacturing records and things like that. And one of the things that I like that I've seen, and I was actually thinking about doing it for my label, but I really like this. It kind of harkens back to like the early '90s when artists, kind of put a sticker at the top and would talk about the release, and it was kind of like the promo place for the record. It would kind of tell a little bit about it, but it wasn't like full artwork. But if you're not going to do full artwork, which has its own pluses, I really like the clean style of just putting what it's about in just a small picture. Some of them are in color. Obviously, a lot of times with dub techno, there's like a grayscale or I guess black and white sort of style that dub techno is very known for, and Noosa kind of does a really good job of kind of capturing that with the cover here. But you can see here also is a real machine here, and then the label here is called 43 Station. The EP is called Sleep Frequencies, series by Noosa Sound System, and this is his first release on his label, and I guess it looks like the catalog is correlates with the label. It's 43001. Again, there's a link down below for the Bandcamp page. I just wanted to show you the release. So it looks like there's 6 copies in white and 6 copies in clear, and talk about a clean record. I mean, look at the quality job on this. I mean, it feels like it's 160 gram, which is my favorite. 140 always feels too light to me. 180 feels a little bit, I don't know. It's 180 is okay sometimes for albums, but for EPs, I don't really like 180 grams. I just think it's a little bit too much. I think it's overkill. I think 160 is the perfect. But I love the clean look on here. Normally, a lot of people maybe aren't fans of clear records because you can't see the grooves as much and see where the track stops. But when you get a really nice, clean, shiny type clear, this particular one, you definitely can see it really well. I mean, you can even see it here, me holding it up. You can see the lines there, of the tracks, and then this side, it looks like there's none on here. This one's kind of a, if you look closely, it's a little hard to tell, but you can see that cutoff this is one full track on this side. You can kind of tell when you kind of look it up a little bit closer. It's just a break. From a little far, it does look like a track break, but when you actually have it under light as you're spinning it, you can see that it's just a light shadow of a break of a track, and not so much this side, which is a more of a clean break. I don't know if you can see that, but if you're into like mixing records and stuff like that, you can tell on this. But really nice presentation and pressing on this, very very special. And then the other thing that's really nice about it is it comes with this program, this really nice, it's like I don't know, 4x8 or 4x9, something like that, maybe 5x9, little booklet. And you can see, obviously, it looks like the catalog number is gonna continue with this catalog number. And to collect records and things like that is one thing, but I mean, to collect booklets and things like that from the actual releases is definitely stepping it up another notch. And again, hats off to him for just creating such a special package. I mean, look at this. Welcome to 43 Station, beaming technoid transmission from Earth with love. Also, some really cool pictures in here. And then it talks a little bit about the label and the background of it. The pictures of the release here, and then the background of Noosa Sound System talks a little bit about him. and then also, some more pictures, and then it goes into, after a couple more pictures, it goes into him talking about, making the tracks. I really like the saying too. This is kind of his thoughts in making updates to this tracks, and I'll explain a little bit of that in a second. But this can result in these semi-lucid states of listening where one is never sure if they are dreaming what they hear. And that's, I did a recent video about sleeping to music and some of my favorite artists that I like sleeping to music. And, that's always such a great thing about like sleeping to music and drifting away to music is there's states where you kind of, like you go through where you're not sure if you're like asleep, and then you might wake up and it's like the peak of the track or a certain part that wakes you up. And I find all those really interesting when you listen to music. It's just kind of a different kind of state, like he's talking about, like a lucid state where you're listening to music and you're drifting off and you don't know whether it's dreamlike or part of your dream. And I always think that, like, if you fall asleep to an album and then maybe you hear it later on in a week, there's been some times where I get to like a certain part of the track or a certain part of the album, and I'll hear it and I'll be like, oh, I remember this. I very briefly woke up to this and thought this was so great, and then fell back asleep real quick. Like there's times when I fall asleep to music and something like plays and I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, this is really good. And then, later on I'll hear it and I'll remember it that I did that. So it's kind of a different, enjoyment of playing, of enjoying music that is sort of geared towards, ambient music or even sleeping and stuff like that. But then each track is called, there's frequency 1, frequency 2, and frequency 3. At the end of this video, just shortly, I'll start playing these 3 tracks so you can hear them. But it just talks a little bit about his making the track and a nice technical side of it as well. And also, it's a nice combination of his thoughts of the technical side of it, how he did it, and then also the reasons why he did it. So, just some nice in-depth reason why, why and how he made the music. And that's really cool, too, to get kind of the background of how somebody's inspired when they're actually making the music. I know people that listen to dub techno are a lot of times they're very much into how the music's made and how it's presented and the levels and the steps that they take to make their music sound different. Like dub techno is a style that when you get into it, like it's very it's almost hard to explain, but it's very intricate, and it's also there. It's one style of music that's trying to push the sonic envelope and the processes of processing sound. Like when you think of the tape origins and tape loops and tape echo and stuff like that, and using tape machines in the studio as a way to affect sounds into the records, right? Like that's kind of comes from the origins of dub music and using the studio and just the whatever kind of ways that you can affect sound, doing it differently, splicing tape and editing it and running it through different tape machines to have loop and different ways to make echo and delays and things like that. And it just kind of all comes from that. And when you put sounds through different processing ways and different envelopes and modulators and everything like that, and it can become a very interesting and very in depth. And I think one of the things that's cool about it is, if from the outside, if you're looking at dub techno, it can seem very like the tracks seem very similar in a lot of ways, but when you really like get into it, like you notice like the steps and the depths that people are taking to make their music kind of push the boundaries and sound different. And here Noosa in the booklet kind of explains that, and so that's a nice insight to somebody's mind. Below you'll see a link for his label so you can follow it. Also you'll see a release On my sub label for his release for free download, if you like, he made a really good soundtrack. It's a kind of like soundtrack ambient mix called Soul Transmissions. It's about a 50-minute, 53-minute album, and a one track, and it's something really nice to explore. It's definitely kind of has like a apocalyptic kind of reminds me of Future Sound of London, like back in the early like 90s. It kind of reminds me of Life Forms, a mix of like Life Forms and ISDN, but without any kind of IDM beats or anything like that. Strictly more field recording. I don't know if I'd say field recording. It sounds like there is some in there, but definitely a project that's more ambient and more soundtrack like than more techno. But I'll put those links down below, and I think that's about it. But yeah, I just wanted to share his music. I mean, I really appreciate him sending me this copy. Very, very nice of him, and definitely wanted to give him a shout out in a video and support great artists like Noosa Sound System. So yeah, having said that, let's check out his the 3 tracks from this. And I think listening to this digitally on YouTube doesn't quite give it the I think the attention it deserves than playing it on vinyl. I got a chance to play this a couple times, maybe the day he sent it. I think I got it last month, and then I played it a few times for other people through the vinyl version, and sonically it's just one of the most amazing ambient dub techno records I've heard in a long time. So if you're interested, there's a couple copies still left to buy, but it's definitely, if you're interested in like really like one-off very special dub techno records, like Noosa Sound System doing some good stuff. But still wanted to share the music here in this video. But again, the sonic quality in digital is here on YouTube is not going to be even a quarter of what it sounds like on this really nice vinyl. But having said that, I still like to share the music. So let's check out was it Sleep Frequencies? Yeah, I'm bad with names sometimes. Sleep Frequencies 1, 2, and 3.
have a very dreamlike quality, and I do find it fascinating. I'd like to look
There's
at.
no dream because it's never dream. It's hypnagogical image.
Hypnagogical image.
Before,
What is that?
it's 10 minutes before sleep. 10 minutes, 15 minutes before sleeping, happy. Some gen, some kind of and then more careful photographic style and no message and explanation. Sometimes after 20 years, some scientific people tell this perhaps